All right, guys, welcome to Left Seat, Right Seat. We're here today with Carlo, who's former military as well, and he's also been in the finance world for a while. So he's here to talk to us about um, military entrepreneurship and some healthcare strategies and finances that we can use. All right, thanks. All right, Carlo, how about you tell us what's going on? How you been?
Hey, good morning. Morning to everybody. Enjoying the last few warm days here in beautiful Chicago.
All right,
85 degrees outside.
nice.
Anyway, really appreciate the opportunity to share some of my experiences after the military and my unique story about how I got into the military. Um, this goes back a little while back in the day. I joined back in 1976, and how I joined at that time was finished high school and trying to figure out how to go to college. And for those of you who don't remember that far, or weren't born by that time, the U.S. was in a really bad recession after coming out of the Vietnam War and so forth. And I was living in New York City in Brooklyn at the time, and I went down to Brooklyn College, and the recruiter, the counselor, basically said to me, says, well, there's not a lot of money for college, but, the old Army World War II GI Bill was ending December 31st, 1976. Why don't you just join the Army, and that way you'll get 4 years of college? And I said, that sounds good. There's no war, so might as well go. And I went down and I joined. I joined the Army in May of '76 and ended up spending about 7 years in the military. My first 4 years, I was in the artillery as a 13 Bravo, field artillery,
Nice.
working on 109 self-propelled howitzers. We're stationed in Wiesbaden, Germany for about 4 years. Did that, had a great time, got a chance to travel around Europe and see, and never thought that I would ever get a chance to see Europe, but
Right.
really bought a car, drove around and had a really good time. Played football in the Bundesliga
Oh,
in
nice.
a small town that was outside the base in Wiesbaden, because originally I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, so I grew up playing football, not American football, but the world football.
Right, right. Yeah.
And that more so than anything got me to see Germany because you played home and away matches with the different clubs. So I got a chance to travel around Germany and see it.
Nice.
Left Germany and changed my MOS to 71 P, which was Flight Operations Coordinator. Did that for about a year and a half. My last duty station was Fort Devon, Massachusetts. And at that time, I really wanted to go back to Germany. I was hoping they would give me orders to reenlist and go back to Germany, but they didn't. So I just opted out for my DD-214 and really went to pursue my goal of why I went into the military was to be able to get credits to be able to go to college and get a college education. So that's my journey through doing that. Came out, went to school, started going to school, got my first degree. I was able to leverage my 4 years really well. I used part of my credits to get my first certificate in computer programming, and then I completed a 2-year degree, an associate degree. Did that, then went out into the work world, tried to begin my career in consulting, doing business consulting. Did that for a couple of years, then went back to school, finished up my bachelor's degree, and then went back into consulting again. So I've had a long career in doing kind of business consulting and business and technology consulting. And when I went back to do my bachelor's degree, I graduated cum laude, and they offered me a scholarship to continue to finish my master's. So I just went ahead and did that and finished my master's. So I did my undergrad and my master's at Northeastern Illinois University here in Chicago. Finished that, and again, as I said, I went back into consulting. Did independent consulting on my own, And at that time, in the early 90s, this new phenomena in technology started coming out, client-server networks. So I work with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses in the $5 to $10 million range, who were all fascinated with the coming of all this computerization for businesses and more efficient ways of doing things. So I hit a really nice niche to be able to have those skills and offer those kind of services to mom and pop operations. And again, as I said, small, operations that have basically doing, between $5 and $10 million a year, which is a pretty good lifestyle business, in the Chicago area. Did that, and then I graduated from that into really big time consulting when I joined Anderson Consulting in 1998. Mm-hmm. And Anderson basically trained me into the skill sets that I would go on to develop the rest of my career in supply chain management and finance. Worked with them for about 4 years, and then went back to school again in early 2000s. In fact, 2002, to do my MBA at the University of Chicago, and did my MBA in finance. After that, came back out from doing, went back into big time consulting, worked with Capgemini, did that for about a year. And then I got recruited in about 2006. I got recruited to become the chief financial officer and first deputy commissioner at the Chicago Department of Public Health, which was a really great experience for me because I could take all those learnings that I had from the military consulting and my MBA experience and bring it to a government agency that, we always know all the negative things about government, how horrible it is. It's not efficient. They should run more like a business.
Right.
And it was a great incubator for me to test a lot of the things that I had learned over the years, team building, getting people to believe in a vision and a mission, efficiency in supply chain, doing things, in systematic ways, because that's all we do in the military. Everything is a system, and figure out how all the systems work and they connect. And the more you can make the systems run efficiently, the better the total outcome becomes. So that was a great experience. Did that for about 4 years also, and then eventually left the city and got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug in the early 2000s, in mid 2000, about 2013, nice. When myself and a couple other buddies of mine, we started up this tech startup called Tap Spaces, in which we were trying to really think about mobile marketing and how to bring mobile marketing technologies to these same kind of small businesses, as primarily on the retail side. Because everybody's walking into their stores with a smartphone, and the revolution in smartphones and apps and the internet and mobile technology, it's really starting to pick up. And really try to get customers to be more in touch with their businesses and businesses to learn a little more about their customers so that they can offer more personalized products and services, to their customers, thereby being able for them to raise their revenue, build better customer relationships, and really just grow their business overall. Right. Did that for about 3 years. We built an app and we got it, into about 4 or 5 different companies. But the tech startup world is a brutal environment, really, really brutal environment, okay. Especially when it comes to the part of raising funds to scale your business. Right. It is really, really a hard thing to do. And like they say, the statistics are 9 out of every 10 startups fail. Yeah. We were on the fail side just simply because we couldn't raise enough capital to scale the business, and the technology turned over. And once the technology turned over, and your technology becomes obsolete, and you're not able to transition to the next versions of technologies, it's very, very difficult to continue. So you basically have to shut down and start all over again because that ship has sailed. But during that experience, what I was fortunate to be able to expose to is the concern around veterans entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And two organizations that I got associated with here in Chicago, the big tech incubator that we have is called 1871. And within 1871, there's a tech incubator for veterans called Bunker Labs, Bunker, Bunker Labs. And they help veteran entrepreneurs who are trying to start up tech companies, incubate them. So they go through the whole process. They have a competition. You submit the application with your ideas, about what it is that you want to do, and they select a group of 10 companies to go through their incubator program, which is usually about 16 weeks or so, 10 to 16 weeks. And and then they try to help you raise funding to get your tech, your business model, out there and growing and scaling your business model. The other one that I was also fortunate to participate is in Techstars. Techstars is one of the largest startup tech incubators in the world. And within Techstars, they have a subset focused on veteran entrepreneurship called Patriot Bootcamp.
Mm-hmm.
We were fortunate to also participate in the Patriot Bootcamp, but again, this is a really, really brutal world,
right.
and it goes so fast. I mean, because technology turns over so fast. If you can get to scale, I mean, basically, rough numbers, especially if you're doing what we call B2C, business to consumer. If your business model is around business to consumer, you have to get a lot of people using your application really fast.
Right.
So your first benchmark is how do you get from 0 to 100,000 people using your application? Okay, if you can get to 0 to 100,000 people, there you go. You find some more friends and family seed funding in order to get that done.
Right.
Then the next benchmark is how do you get from 100,000 to 1 million people using your benchmark? Because none of the investor class is going to be interested in funding your business model if you can get 1 million people using your application. So those are critical benchmarks, and they want you to get to those things in 6 to 12 months or less.
Wow.
And that's because one of the problems we have is that although we solved a really critical business problem for the businesses, our model was basically B2B2C, so business to business to consumer, because the end consumer used our product with the business, but the end consumer wasn't our direct paying customer. The
right.
businesses were our direct paying customer, and it's hard to scale businesses at that rate, to be able to amass that number of end users using the application. But overall, it has been a great experience for me because I see that where I am in my life today, joining the military when I was 17, and the discipline and the structure that I learned from that experience has had a profound effect on the choices that I've made in my life, and I always tell my nephews and my sons and so forth, it made me the person who I am today. So it was a positive experience for me. And sometimes we say, would you recommend that experience for other people? Sure, I would, but there's still an individual choice. Given the era that you're in and the circumstances, I think would drive more of whether you decide to do that or not.
Right. Yeah, no, it's really good. It's a great thing. Seems like you picked up a lot of knowledge along the way. It's like so many different experiences, from the business side to the tech side to everything else. And I think it's pretty good. So, I mean, and I know you wanted to talk about it a little bit more, but what would you say about, or when you were like the CFO for the for Chicago, you said you have some healthcare strategies and financial strategies and financing for healthcare that you picked up that you would like to let
Sure.
everybody know.
So it's interesting because coming from tech and supply chain and business consulting, coming into a government entity, governments are slow to adopt technology. It's just the way it is. Technology, drives business change. I mean, and the biggest driver of technology that changed the world basically was the 90s when we had Y2K.
All right.
Everybody, you know, so up until the early 90s, the technology component for most businesses was that room in the back there where the guys, those geeky, nerdy guys sat. Technology wasn't so seen as a strategic enabler to create competitive advantages for business. But then in the 90s came and this Y2K scare came, and massive amounts of money was invested in businesses to upgrade technology. And that just changed the way the world works and the way businesses, so how to use technology as a competitive advantage. So when you come to the public and social sector of the economy, public being including government, social sector, including nonprofits and so forth, they don't have those same kind of drivers, but they have systems and processes that are manual, paper-based, that can take advantage of automation.
Right.
But they're very slow to adopt those things because there is not for lack of a better term, a profit-driven incentive, a competitive advantage incentive for them to do those things.
Right.
So when I went to the health department, here's an organization with a $200 million budget being managed on spreadsheets and paper.
Mm-hmm.
So in my world, I was like, "Oh wow,
Yeah.
this is like the perfect playground for me," because
Right.
it's like, wow, if I can cut 10% of this inefficiency, suddenly I have $20 million to modernize the health department.
Right.
And cutting 10% inefficiency in a 200 million manual paper-based system was not a very difficult thing to do.
Right.
So we kicked up a project called Project Focus, with the focus on the future of the health department, because the commissioner, who also at the time who hired me, also came from the private sector, wasn't a government, a lifelong government employee, came from the private sector, 25 years of his own urology practice.
Right.
So he's bringing a lot of business-oriented approaches, and he's thinking, I want people who think in that terms, to really to be part of his executive team.
Mm.
And he had a very clear mission: build me a 21st century health department. Because the nexus of most of what the health department does is collect data.
Right.
And we're collecting data on paper and spreadsheets,
Yeah.
and having very, very, very little insight into the ability to have data integrity, and then more importantly, the ability to analyze that data to gain insights into the population demographics of how these different kinds of health conditions, public health conditions, affect the masses. So this was a huge automation project to automate the front end services, of where we collect data at the touch point with customers, and the back end support services, that support the delivery of all of those services, and being able to, get reporting, and really start thinking about running the health department from reports as opposed to the social good that everybody feels like, oh, we're doing such a wonderful job, it's a social good. And that is that is your competitive advantage. But if you don't have data to tell you whether you're doing good, bad, or indifferent,
right. Yeah.
Exactly. So bring in best practices from the private sector, and this is one of the things that I actually really kind of got the staff and people to rethink about it. I'm not trying to turn you into a business. All I'm saying is that Microsoft Office doesn't function any differently in the private sector or the public sector or the social sector. If you have a spreadsheet, if you have Word, if you have access databases, make use of them and use those tools as the way to perform your job on a daily basis. So changing the culture of the organization to think in terms of systems. So like one of the things that we did, we had a massive process mapping project to map all the processes in the organization, because you basically had about 15 to 20 little siloed business units under the umbrella of the health department, but they all function independently and not really taking advantage of the economies of scale, like, across the umbrella of the health department. And an example of that is within each one of those siloed business units, everybody had an HR person, a finance person, a grants person. And the health department, also the umbrella part of the organization, had a finance team, a grants team, and an HR team. So duplication of effort, misinformation, just horrible. But once we did that process mapping, and people can see, because one of the revelations that was just, that I always walked away and thought it was fantastic, when people started saying, you know what, I've worked with this person for 15 years and I had no idea what they did. But they used to send me stuff. I did some stuff with it, and then I sent it someplace else. But I never really know what they were doing. I did what I did, and I never really know when I sent it to the someplace else what it was and what was the end product that comes from that. So that process mapping allowed them to see the flow of work throughout the organization, and that started changing the culture of the organization, because culture is such an important element about how you build productive organizations. And we know that because the military has a culture.
Right.
And it's one of the most respected cultures on the planet, because of how efficient, the military is at getting things done.
Right.
So we were able to transform the health department, and the learnings of, how to think about a $200 million budget that, yes, most of our revenue comes from grants, but we are competing with other grant organizations for those grants.
Right.
When we file for the grant, we're not the only person, filing for the grant. So the notion that, yes, we have customers. Who are our customers? The granting institutions are our customers, because they have this money looking for organizations to deliver these kinds of services. We have to apply along with other people. So that's our competitors. Yes, we have competitors. Yes, we have customers, and getting them to think in that kind of cultural way and change the culture really had a great impact on it.
Right. Oh, that's great. And then for the veterans trying to do their own entrepreneurship things, like what would you do? What would you say, like, you learned, and what tips would you give for them coming up and trying to make their own companies and everything?
So I would say you have to think in terms of, everybody thinks they have the next big idea, and that's a good place to start, okay? But once you do that, you have to go out and do some basic research to understand and validate whether that idea is something that people will demand. And a great place to ask people about that is your friends and family, especially children.
Right.
Teenagers and children, ask them if they think that's a good idea. Or if you produce the product or service, would they use it? Would it make a difference in their lives?
Mm.
You know, so so I think that once you get your, I'll give you an example. So my brother about a month or so ago had thoughts around idea because he's a nurse and he was thinking, wow, can we set up something like an Uber for handicapped people? So you can provide them services like that. Well, he was all excited about this idea, but he didn't do any research. And when I gave him the reality about it, is that most transportation in the U.S. for disabled people is government subsidized.
Right.
You know, so one, you have to have a specialty vehicle
Right.
in order to transport disabled people because probably a good proportion of them are probably in wheelchairs or so. So it's not just like a regular car,
Right.
you know. So immediately there, without him doing any some research to think through the process, the question becomes, okay, so if you take the Uber model, yeah, it's everybody who has a car. Uber technically is the largest fleet management company in the world, but they don't own any cars, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
They don't own any cars, So now how many people own a vehicle to transport somebody in a wheelchair? So my point being as that as an example, when you have an idea, really kind of peel back the onion and look at the world and go, who's going to want this? How much demand is going to be for it? And can you more than anything else scale it? Because scale is the thing that is going to, investors are looking at scale because, albeit, Snapchat has, several hundred million users.
Right.
Still haven't made a profit yet.
Yeah.
But they got 100 million, they got several hundred million users,
Right.
So, and then the second thing I would say is really think about where the problem that you're solving resides. Is it in a business to business relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or is it a business to consumer relationship?
Right.
To really think about that, because the way that you approach how you're going to build that business model is a totally different set of choices if it's a B2B versus a B2C environment.
Right. Got you. Nice. And for, say the entrepreneur, like the boot camp and the bunker labs, like for those, like if you go into those, like what kind of information and what kind of help do they provide for you going through those?
So most of these incubators, they will provide you some kind of financial support, during the period. So if you get through the competition and you're chosen to be, and most of them do about 10 startups for their semesters. They will provide you training. You have a period in which you have to build the application. Okay, during that period, you really have to build a functioning application.
Mm-hmm.
They'll teach you the different aspects of business, finance, legal, operations, raising money, putting on presentations, pitching and so forth. So you have all of those supports, and then culminating in the end of the program where you have pitch day, and they bring up lots of different investors along the way, and you pitch to those investors. Along the way, they'll give you mentors. So you have mentors in different aspects of business who will work with your team, and mentor you through the program, to try and get you to success. So those are how most of those incubators work. But it's a lot of work. It's hard. There's a lot of sacrifice, and especially a lot of financial sacrifice to be made. So you have to take a serious look at the kind of financial sacrifice, because you can have a job with a steady stream of cash flow. Okay, and especially if you have a family, if you're raising a family, it's really hard to think about ceasing that cash flow, for some future gain, and what you're going to do, you're going to cease the inflow of the cash flow, but you're not going to cease the outflow.
Right.
Because you still have bills to pay, you still have to live,
Exactly.
So that becomes the trick, can you sustain the period, that you need to go through, because there's always going to be outflow.
Right.
So being able to balance that, so yeah. But if your heart is in it, and really also too, again, having a good team, and really you have to have the person with the idea, the people with the ideas. If it's a tech, if it's purely a tech thing, you got to have a good tech engineer, somebody who can actually build the technology, that is a co-founder, and somebody, somebody else who all three of you all share the passions and bring some skills, to the table, and much past three people, it becomes really difficult to think about, having a startup beyond that. I mean, and those would be the three kinds of roles that I would think that I've seen work most effective in the entrepreneurial area. But again, there are lots of opportunities for veterans in tech entrepreneurship. Again, it's just really a tough place to be. When you look at that statistic, 9 out of 10 startups fail. It's really difficult.
Yeah. They do say, like, when you're doing an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur thing, like, you definitely need a lot of support, like financial and emotional support from everybody, right? You need a family backing you, and then you need to just go out there and get the funding from somebody, so.
Right. Yeah. Those are the tough things, and getting people to see your vision and believe in your vision, is usually sometimes a very challenging thing, to do, because they will ask really tough questions, but again, it's if you're going down that road, I would validate, your idea before you make any kind of investment into thinking that you can turn that idea into a business model.
Right. And for you, what has been your experience with trying to deal with investors or get investors? Like, how'd that go out?
It's a mixed bag. You go to all of these competitions, these pitches and so forth, and and some of these investors are just in it just to run you around. They're not really serious. They'll never write a check for anything.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be conscious about that, because you prepare, you go and pitch, especially if you have to go travel to go to a pitch, session.
Right.
And also too, there's an ugly side of it, in which investors are just interested in taking your idea,
right.
And because they have more resources, they can just take your idea. So you got to be also careful about that.
Yeah.
And then the other 800-pound gorilla in the room is race and gender. Still, north of 90% of all investors' capital goes to white males versus minority and women entrepreneurs. That's just the reality of life. I mean, it's not a knock on the world. It's just the world.
Right.
And some people don't want to talk about that. Everything is race and gender, but that's just a knock. 90% of most of all investment capital goes to white male startups. Doesn't matter how stupid their idea is, they can get funding.
Right.
So those things are realities that you just have to face,
Mm-hmm.
in dealing with it, because in any industry, it's just life. It's good, bad, and indifferent, and the ugly, So
Right.
yeah, you just deal with it.
All right. Great. And do you have any other things that you wanted to state, or?
Sure. Well, right now where I am in my career is, coming out of the health department, I was able to, I used to do a lot of guest lectures at the School of Public Health at University of Illinois, Chicago. So now I'm a full-time lecturer there in the School of Public Health, and I teach courses in strategic planning, finance, budgeting, management, ethics, and it's really a joy to really, share my knowledge and experience with millennials. I mostly teach millennials, so they have to keep me young and informed, because I'm on the old fogey side, But this whole area of healthcare, I mean, we spend $3 trillion on healthcare annually, across the public and the private sector. And we have, when you look at the World Health Organization's outcomes for, childbirth, chronic diseases, and so forth, we are down in the 35th, 45th percentile, but, my thing about it is that we keep trying to take this industry and treat it as a commodity and say that it can function in the private sector in a market-based economy. And that's just not the way healthcare works, because, when you need a heart operation, where do you go price shopping?
Right.
To get the best price for, the emergency heart attack,
Right.
So we have some serious problems around there. So really, talking about these issues and really thinking about population health and population-based health approaches, in which you really shift in from the disease maintenance system that we have. We don't really have a healthcare system. We have a disease maintenance system. When you look at all the data, 90% of the consumption of someone who is on Medicare, 90% of the consumption of their healthcare dollars occur in the last, year to 6 months of their lives, where we're trying to play God, and do everything possible for somebody. You're 89 years old and you're gonna do a prostate operation on an 89-year-old. Does that really make any sense? So, and our reluctance to think of the preventative side, to spend money on the preventative side before, to stop people from, getting these kinds of health conditions, we're just reluctant to do that because we have a culture around, that's giving somebody something for nothing, type of approach to, the healthcare system. So I enjoy doing that right now, lecturing full-time at the university, get a chance to have a lot of different experiences. But the interesting thing about it is that all my past experiences, even my entrepreneurial, because there's some really, really innovative entrepreneurial things happening in the healthcare sector. Again, a lot of it is on the front end service delivery side, so I went to get my physical a couple weeks ago, and when you used to go in the doctor and the blood pressure machine used to hang up on the wall and the ear and throat machine. Now the doctor came in with the smartphone and the thing connected to her phone.
Oh, wow.
The data just gets downloaded right into my electronic medical record, So a lot of this kind of is home monitoring devices in which you can monitor. So like I monitor my blood pressure here at home, you know, all the data, I download it, send it to the doctor. So now rather than the static, I go today and my blood pressure is high,
Right.
you know, and you try to make a decision on that. Whereas now she can still see for the last 3 months, what is the average blood pressure rate over time? Okay, now I can make a different kind of recommendation on what I'm going to prescribe you to manage your blood pressure, as opposed to, oh man, your blood pressure is really high. Now I give you a dose of medication that may not be the right dosage. So these kind of home monitoring devices, there's really, really interesting space in that, for entrepreneurial opportunities, for healthcare.
Nice. That sounds great. All right. Sweet. So, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? Because I think you've nailed a lot of subjects already. So.
No, I think that covers pretty much my 61 years.
Right.
From leaving home at 16 and joining the military, I've had a great life and look forward to having another, 30, 40 years of great life, so,
Right.
But the main thing for me right now is my ability to really share my knowledge and experiences with folks who are starting out their careers and help them on the way to think about how they can shape a really successful career. And I really do enjoy that a lot, veterans, non-veterans, civilians, anybody I come in contact with, I really have a pleasure in doing that.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of part of why we're doing this, so we can help those guys coming out, like, see what the real world's going to be about, or not the real world per se, but what the new world that they're coming back into is going to be about. It's going to be real different. Yeah.
And veterans have lots of good skills, to bring. I mean, discipline, integrity, knowing how systems work. Every organization that you go into has a set of systems.
Mm-hmm.
And the successful ones have really well-honed, well-defined running systems. The bad ones, their systems are broken.
Right.
And you need to go, and that creates opportunity, that you can go in there and figure out how to make those systems work efficiently. And you can use your military experience to help organizations,
Yeah, exactly. The knowledge that you gain in the military really helps as you come out. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sweet.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks, Carlo. Well, guys, hope you guys enjoyed today's talk on finance and entrepreneurship and just some financial strategies that could help. And come on back next week. We will be here. So talk to you guys later. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Carlo.
Bye.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to Left Seat, Right Seat. If you liked what you heard, just go ahead, hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends. And come back next week for another episode. And also follow us on Facebook and Instagram and all your other podcast venues. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one, and we'll see you again later. Bye.
See ya.